important to know why you're sharing. I think a lot of times, it's like, I want to be, a voice. I want to be relevant. I want to be out there. I want to get the likes, trying to get the message out. But sometimes that could lead you down a path of maybe sharing something you're not quite ready to share. And so really trying to figure out, is this what I want to share? Is this going to move whatever my mission is forward? Is it going to impact people? So that's just what I like to think about.
Yeah, I would totally follow up on that and just check in with myself and say, okay, why am I sharing this? And is it because I want to come from a place of love and advocacy and service? Or am I doing it because I feel like I'm going to be wrong if I don't, or shamed? Especially in the world that we're in today, there's a lot of advocacy, and you want to pick the thing that feels most resonant with you and really be a hardcore advocate for that, and not feel like you're doing something because someone else thinks you should do it, or whatever that is. And so to me, it's checking in, and checking in also means journaling about the things that matter to me, and know and have an awareness for what it is I actually care about, what is true to me, and then coming from that place.
So mine definitely goes off of that, where I would say that you have to prioritize your emotions and your boundaries and then move from there. So, and it's also recognizing that it's going to be different each day. It doesn't need to be the same each day.
Right.
One day you're going to show up and you're going to feel like you really want to share something that you're typically vulnerable with, but it feels good. And other days you're going to want to just keep that close to the vest, and that's okay. And so it doesn't need to be consistent, but you have to prioritize what feels right for you.
Yeah. And in thinking about sharing something that can be a very personal journey online, and being so vulnerable, it can be really scary because, as we know, the internet is amazing. It brings us to amazing people and amazing connection. And also, there are people who hide behind the screen and say mean things. So, Garrett, I'm going to start with you. How do you navigate any sort of potential challenges or negativity on social media while sharing your journey?
Yeah, so I think, again, it starts with the intention. Like Vickie said, if I'm very clear and connected to my intentions as to why I am sharing, then it really doesn't matter what the outcome is, as long as I'm making sure to stay true to my truth. And there's a mentor taught me this, I said it yesterday as well, that everything that I do, everything that I say, even everything that I think, is coming from one or two places. It's either an act of love, it's from the kindness and the love that's within my heart, or it is a cry for help. It is me acting out a pain from the past.
Yeah.
And so if I know about that and think about that before I share anything, it's like, okay, is this coming from my truth? Is this coming from my heart? Is this coming from service? Or is this me trying to prove something, or trying to act out of the fear of shame, or whatever that may be? And then also reminding myself that if someone does come onto my page and say something negative, well, that's probably a cry for help that they're experiencing. So I can just have compassion for them, that's how they want to spend their time, and realize that it actually says more about them than it actually says about myself.
Yeah.
And so that's where I like to come from.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would remind everyone that no one that is happy and successful would ever waste 1 ounce of energy tearing someone else down. So those that come to your page that do that they're not living a happy life. That's it, first and foremost. But I will be honest that I show up to the trolls differently every day also, and sometimes I choose to address it, and I clip the comment and I go right back with a video. And sometimes I laugh at it, sometimes I ignore it, but I do sometimes answer it, which I don't say. I'm not saying that everyone needs to choose that, but I do sometimes answer it because as a kid, I would have liked to see someone standing up to that and answering back. And so that's why I do choose that sometimes.
Yeah.
When it feels right.
Yeah. And I think what I love about those two different answers is it just speaks to the fact that even though we share this thing in common, that there are different ways to respond to things, which is really great. Vickie, you mentioned earlier that you started sharing your cleft journey publicly later in life. So I know as people come to CleftCon, you sort of feel a little bit inspired to maybe start doing that yourself. So do you have any advice that you would give to somebody who's maybe new to sharing their cleft journey online, or wants to start but doesn't know where? Yeah, what advice would you have?
Sure, and I can't claim ownership over this phrase I'm about to say. I wish I could, but and really no pun intended, but it's important to speak from the scar, not the wound. That when you're sharing about something it is one of the most raw kind of painful things that we do go through. There are moments of joy, of course, and empowerment, but it's our faith, and we're talking about all that we have endured. And so making sure that you're protecting yourself when you're talking about this, and that you're talking about something, or whatever circumstance it might be, where you're okay to do it. You're not trying to do something, thinking that you need to, spill everything out on the table, to make sure that you're healed enough that when you do get negative comments or you do get somebody saying something, it's not going to bother you, because that part of your journey is solid and is healed.
Yeah.
That.
Yeah, mic drop.
Yeah. I really love the scar, not the wound. Really love that. Thank you.
Yeah.
I would say, back to I brought up the intention, so I won't go into that again, but it's getting really clear on why are you getting out there and sharing? And then after that, just if we're thinking strictly about starting to share the story, I think it's also really important when it comes to social media. It's a tool, right? And a tool can be used in many ways. If I think of a hammer can create things and it can build things, but a hammer can also destroy things, and it can be harmful. And so coming from that place, because it can be easy to be sucked in and become not the creator, but the consumer, and getting really caught up in social media and then comparing and all of that. Yeah. So coming from the place of, okay, why am I doing this? And how do I want to spend my time? If I'm going to spend 30 minutes a day on social media, okay, for this 30 minutes, I'm going to interact with people that I resonate with, so they know that I'm cheering them on, and I want to be with them, and I want to support them. And then maybe another 30 minutes is I'm creating and I'm putting stuff out there. But if there's not an intention to that time, you can get lost. And it's easy. It's created to do that for us. And so I think it's super important to be intentional with why, be intentional with how, and then remember that it truly is a tool that you get to decide, is it going to be something that creates, or is it going to be something that harms either yourself or other people?
I would say to just take it one day at a time, and where I started was just with one hashtag. So it just felt scary the first time, I'm claiming this as part of my identity. But it opens you up to meeting people and just starting there. So you don't need to do this grandiose caption, and you don't need to have this coming out. If that feels good for you, then do that. But if you're just looking to take it one step at a time and see how it feels, just start hashtagging and then digging into those hashtags and connecting with people, and just start small. But I would also encourage everyone in this room to know that if you're trying to figure out how you're sharing your own journey or your child's journey on the internet, we're all connected with this in this room, but also we are not just our cleft. We are so many other things than that. So if you're sharing that one part of you, share other things as well, so that on those days when it doesn't feel as authentic or it doesn't feel as positive, you're still sharing something else about you, and there's not so much pressure on that one to show up in that one topic on a day that it doesn't feel great.
Kind of off of the hashtag thing, I remember when I was first kind of dipping my toe into the social media world and the community groups and things like that, and there was always the hashtag cleft proud. And I was, curious just to know kind of people's I know what my reaction was initially when I was seeing that hashtag, and I'm like, what? Cleft proud, what does that mean? And I think it's important, certainly as years have gone on, I can say that and use that hashtag, but again, I can't claim ownership over this phrase either, but it's really important to, think about that. it's hard to be proud of something when it hasn't brought you any joy. And so, you have to, again, kind of the protecting yourself. Like, it didn't feel authentic to me to use the hashtag cleft proud because I didn't feel that at that time. But I could use just hashtag cleft and just see what comes up.
Yeah.
But, the other thing about that is you have to go out and look for that joy. It takes work on your part to go out and find it. And so you follow people like Ashley, like Steph, like Garrett, myself, and those that are in this room that are going to be pretty guaranteed to be showing you positivity, truth and honesty. And you just kind of can start dipping your toe in that way.
This is sort of off the cuff, but you said you didn't feel cleft proud when you first started thinking about it. Do you feel that way now? And what is one thing, if you can isolate one thing, that you think helped move you in that direction?
Yeah. I was born in 1977, and we didn't really talk a lot about the emotional sides of things. And so it took me a long time to get to the point of even talking about it. For years, I was not proud of it. I was the only one in my school that looked the way that I did. And so it was really difficult to be like, yay, my cleft.
Right.
But, I became a parent, and I started kind of, seeing my child, through her, through my eyes. And but the one thing that it's taught me, I will say that I am cleft proud now. But the one thing that it's taught me certainly is empathy. It's just something that is a gift that's going to continue, to pay dividends as I get older, and certainly as I parent my child. Like Allie, we were talking about that earlier. It's like we can bestow those gifts onto our kids and future generations because we have lived through all of that.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I think one of the beautiful things about social media is it allows us to connect just with other people with this shared experience. And I know for me, that was something that really gave me a lot more confidence, was seeing all of you, right? And seeing how beautiful and amazing and all the incredible things that you're doing. So this community is amazing.
I would also say that with what Vickie said about growing up in the age of the internet, this used to be something that we grew up very isolated in. We went through our separate journeys. We kept it kind of like a secret. We didn't want people to recognize it. That didn't really feel positive. But it's so amazing now, this part of the internet that connects us and then makes that positive. So as scary as the internet is for the future of our children, this part is great because it can reframe that at an earlier age, whereas I wasn't comfortable until my 30s sharing my cleft story online, and it was one toe at a time.
Right.
And now I think it's different for kids, which is great.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah, going off of what both of you guys shared, I feel like one thing that I think about when I think about part of my intention of sharing is kind of like being a lighthouse. Like, hey, this is my experience, and coming from a place of love in my heart of saying hey, this happened to me, and it allows other people to say, oh yeah, I've experienced this too. And also that it might not even be as you were saying earlier, it might not even be strictly about my cleft. It might be oh my gosh, when you shared this, it reminded me of this burn I had on my arm, and I was very subconscious about it. Or maybe it's someone's skin color, or maybe it's their size. And so you never truly know who you might be waving a flag for. I was talking to Isaac actually earlier, Iva's brother, and he was telling me his experience as the brother. And then I was like, I want to know what my sister experienced, right?
Yeah.
And so you never truly know when you share your story from your heart and your truth,
Right.
how it may impact someone. So
Yeah.
thank you, Isaac.
It's a beautiful thing. And Steph, you said, you didn't feel comfortable sharing your journey until you were in your 30s, and, it went one step at a time. What was it that, inspired you to start sharing it online? And then how has social media personally impacted your cleft journey?
Probably my rebellious side. When the pandemic, the day before I quarantined in the pandemic, I did a photo shoot, and I had lost 50 pounds, and my trainer was like, you're doing this photo shoot. And then I had these pictures, and that was when I was like, okay, I think I'm gonna post these with these hashtags. And it was just very ironic for me that at a time where I could wear a mask and I could conceal my scars and my cleft, I was like, I'm ready to talk about this now. And so it really just started then, and it kind of just took on itself, I guess, from there. And it was probably the feedback. I think the other thing that's special about sharing this is that you don't need to be obsessed with the likes or all of this, because you can get 5 likes and still get a message from a parent that's like, you just saved my child's week because I showed them your video. They've been bullied by 3 people at school, and your video made them feel so seen. And that's what the blessing in our platforms, it takes the numbers kind of away from it because the impact is so much deeper.
Yeah, you can really see that.
Yeah, I always say, like, if I'm sitting here and one person is impacted by one thing that I say, then I've done my job, because I'm just trying to share my truth, and hopefully someone sees their reflection in my story. It's not about being up here and saying, like, here's everything that I have, and I want to tell you all my information. It's like, hey, this is what I've experienced, and it might just touch someone's heart in a way that's like, yeah, you know, I've experienced that too, and it might not be in the exact way that you actually picture it doing that. And my experience actually started, I had been writing poetry for a really long time in my life, and there was an app called Clubhouse. And I don't know if you guys remember it, but on Clubhouse during COVID, I was on there and I was like, oh, like, I don't really think I'm gonna share. I had never really shared my poetry or spoken in public in any way. I was always in the background. I didn't like being called on to read in class. Like, even if someone asked me, I'm not ready, there's a part of me that just kind of clinches up, like, okay.
Right.
And there was this conversation that was happening, and I was like, oh my gosh, this reminds me of a poem that I wrote. And I looked back and I'm like, am I gonna share this poem in front of a whole bunch of people online that I have no clue who they are? And I'm like, no. I'm like, well, you know what? If I get a sign, I'll do it. And as I say that, someone that was speaking was like, you know, take off the mask and just ask. And it was talking about taking off this ego mask, this mask that we present to the world. And I had just reread this poem, and I was like, I say basically that. And so I unmute myself and I started sharing. And literally from that moment on, I've been being asked to share and to speak. And so, you know, it's one of the things that I like to talk about is like following the whisper. And so that little whisper asked me, it was like, you know, maybe you should share. And it's like, no, like, don't do it. This is what might happen. And so I always like to say, like, truly, how can you connect with that whisper and follow that whisper as deeply as possible? Maybe it's write a book. Maybe it's get on stage and speak. Maybe it's, you know, start a community group. And it's, to me, life is about figuring out, connecting to that whisper and following it as deeply as possible.
I 1,000% agree. I call it a pull, right? And I remember the first time I felt the pull, I was like, okay, well, how do I do this? What am I supposed to do? And like, I tried to like find all the steps, and then eventually it like quieted down because like I didn't know what to do with it or whatever. And then when it came back, instead of feeling like I had to have a plan, like I feel like in our culture, you have to have like follow these steps and like come up with like, what is it, the thing that you're gonna do and like whatever. But instead, my therapist actually was like, just listen to it and stoke it. And anytime you feel it get bigger, keep following it. And it takes you amazing places. So the pull, the whisper, it's important.
I love your therapist.
Yeah. Me too. He's on speed dial. We could phone him in right now.
Yeah, phone him. Catch him.
All right. Okay. Garrett, I have another question for you. What strategies have you found most effective in connecting with others and fostering a supportive community through social media?
Yeah, you were mentioning earlier how our clefts gave us compassion and I believe resilience. And I think through that compassion, it starts inquiry and curiosity. So like, why do I feel the way that I do? What's this whisper asking of me? Why is it doing that? And so I feel like through that lens, it's how can I get more curious? Like, even if someone comes and says something really mean as a negative thing on I'll message them. I'll say, hey, how are you? Why,
I love that.
why did you bring that up?
Yeah.
I actually had someone specifically, which might have been alluding to other things like, look at this guy's chapped lips or something like that.
Yeah.
And I just wrote something back to him, and then and he's like, man, thank you. I was just trying to be funny, and and
Yeah.
then we had this whole
And
conversation.
then I showed up, and then you didn't want to say it.
Right.
And so like I said, act of love, cry for help. So if someone's coming at me with this cry for help, it's not about judgment, it's about having an awareness about it. And so it's like, okay, so how can I come from a place of love and say, hey, what's going on with you? And I truly believe like that is the change that the world needs is coming from curiosity and compassion. And so I don't even remember the original question, but curiosity and compassion is my answer in almost every situation, honestly.
Yes.
I was just going to kind of follow up on that as sort of maybe the polar opposite answer.
Yeah.
I do think that it's important, when you are, say, responding, to comments, to make sure that you're in the headspace to take that on. I think a lot of it is like things that I share with, the kids that I work with is like, the first question when you get a negative comment or something comes at you that is not nice, the first question you ask yourself is, do I know this person? And if the answer is no, bye-bye.
Yeah.
Don't even waste another moment on it. Unless you're coming from a spot where you're like, you know what, like that's a pretty big misconception. I feel pretty strong in what my response is going to be, that I'm not going to be really emotional and like try to validate myself to this person that I don't know. But kind of taking it on that way, I think is just, a tool that you can use if you're not quite like, up for taking on all the trolls all the time.
I think that I also have a new answer that's come about from a panel earlier today.
Yeah.
But I think that watching Courtney, that's her name, right? Okay. Watching Courtney, she's just very matter of fact and like, it's no big deal. And I think that when we're sharing those emotional moments, it's great for certain kids that are feeling that way to feel, feel seen, but also it's not a problem. It's not an issue. And that's what that panel was showing us, was that their significant others, you could see the reaction on all of their faces. Like, it's not a problem. What are you talking about? And so I think that if you also embody that, that in general, everyone is self-conscious about something.
Yeah.
And so we carry it automatically that it is because of our cleft.
Right.
And those comments are directed that way. But there are mean comments that are directed to every single person about
that's
something
true.
that they're insecure about. And so if we can kind of bucket it as it's just like that just like another thing that everyone else experiences as well, then you can kind of like put out their flame.
Yes. So true. I feel like that has similar vibes to a thing that my mom told me when I was in middle school, and I was like feeling like everybody was talking about me and like saying mean things or whatever. And I was like, Mom, I think those people over there are talking about me. And she was like, Ashley, you are not that important. Like, and I remember breathing and being like, oh my God, I'm not. Like, thank God, because like, oh my gosh, like it just made me be like, oh yeah, like they could be talking about anything. Like it's not necessarily me. And it's not, right. And of course, growing up, that's part of like the learning experience. And then also when you were talking about taking negativity and turning it into love, there's sort of a spiritual text, and Marianne Williamson, I don't know if anyone knows who she is, but she, talks about when you turn negativity into love, it's a miracle. So thank you for creating miracles. All right, maybe one more question, and then Q&A. So do any of you have any memorable experiences or interactions that have occurred as a result of your social media advocacy efforts within our community?
I'm here.
Yeah.
I will say that when I started posting about it, Troy messaged me saying, you should apply to be a member of the CCAC. And I said, I just did. So that's been a blessing.
Yeah.
I would say that the biggest moments for me are from moms after they've just seen an ultrasound and they come home. It's normally a 3 or 4 a.m. DM when their husband's gone to sleep and they are searching for an answer on the internet. and there might be an article or a video that they've seen of me, and I get this DM that's like, you have no idea how good it feels to see an adult that has thrived
On the other
through
side.
this. You know, I don't know what everyone else's parents were told by their doctors, but my parents were told that I was a failure to thrive, which my mom double birds those doctors to this day.
Yeah.
Since my picture, but so I think that. Sorry, I just lost my train of thought. I think it's the messages from the parents. Because I just can't imagine what that moment, especially today, feels like. And then the little kids. Where they message me from their parents' account.
Yes, so cute.
And those are my favorite, like where they're like, I'm on my mom's phone, but I have a cleft too. And then if I message them back, and then the mom's like, oh my God, we're experiencing some bullying at school, and you made my daughter feel seen. So those are those.
So thank you all so much for sharing your journeys, your vulnerability, all of that. And thank you all for being here and being wonderful.